If you are over 60 and you are still intimate with your partner, I'm sorry to tell you this. The decline you've been blaming on just getting older is very rarely about age at all. It's about 3 specific nightly and morning patterns. Patterns almost nobody connects to intimacy. Patterns most physicians never have time to explain in a 15-minute visit. A landmark study tracking over 600,000 adults found that the single biggest hidden predictor of declining intimacy after 60 wasn't hormones, wasn't medication, and wasn't even relationship satisfaction. It was something happening or failing to happen between dinner and sunrise. Couples who corrected just 3 of these patterns reported a return of desire, comfort, and closeness that they had assumed was permanently behind them. Some of them hadn't felt that way in over a decade. Now, before we go further, I want to tease something. The number 1 factor on today's list is something almost every older adult does every single night without a second thought. It has nothing to do with romance, nothing to do with attraction. And once you hear the mechanism behind it, you will never look at your bedtime routine the same way again. So stay with me to the end. But first, I want to ask you something. Drop your age range in the comments and tell me, is intimacy something you've quietly let go of, or something you're still fighting to hold on to? I read every comment, and your honesty here helps everyone else in this community feel less alone. Now, let's get into it. We're counting down from 3 to 1, ranked from important to the one that changes everything.
Number 3, sleeping in a warm bedroom. This one sounds completely unrelated to intimacy. Stay with me, because the science here connects in a way almost nobody expects. As we age, your body relies on a specific overnight process to regulate hormone production, including testosterone and estrogen, the 2 hormones most directly tied to desire and arousal in both men and women. This process depends heavily on deep, slow-wave sleep, and deep sleep depends heavily on one thing: your core body temperature dropping by 1 to 2 degrees in the early evening. If your bedroom is too warm, that drop is delayed, sometimes by hours. And when that temperature drop doesn't happen efficiently, your body produces less growth hormone and less of the deep sleep hormonal signaling that supports healthy testosterone and estrogen output the next day. Here's where it gets specific to intimacy. Cortisol, your stress hormone, rises when your sleep is fragmented and shallow. And cortisol has a direct, well-documented relationship with libido. When cortisol stays elevated overnight instead of falling to its natural low, it actively suppresses the hormones responsible for desire. Night after night, in a room that's too warm, your body is quietly working against the very chemistry that intimacy depends on. I had a patient, I'll call him Walter, 68, from Sacramento. He and his wife had assumed their physical relationship had simply run its course. We just don't feel it like we used to, he told me. When we reviewed his sleep environment, his bedroom was kept at 74 degrees year-round. Warm blankets, warm room, a habit from decades of cold winters early in his marriage. We made one change. We lowered the thermostat gradually over 2 weeks, down to 65 degrees, with lighter, breathable bedding. Within 3 weeks, Walter reported something he hadn't expected. Not just better sleep, but a noticeable return of morning energy. And yes, a return of desire he had quietly mourned as gone for good. The practical application: lower your bedroom temperature gradually by 2 degrees every few nights, down towards 65 to 68 degrees. Use layered, breathable bedding so you can adjust without fully waking. If you have circulation issues, arthritis, or cold sensitivity, speak with your physician first. And a bedside fan can offer a similar effect if a cooler room isn't comfortable for you. This is not about romance. This is about giving your body the hormonal environment it needs to want intimacy in the first place. Number 2, eating late and skipping the dinner to bedtime window. This one surprises almost every patient I share it with. It has nothing to do with what you eat and everything to do with when.
Researchers call it the dinner to bedtime interval, and it plays a quietly enormous role in hormonal health after 60, including the hormones tied directly to desire and arousal. Here's the mechanism. As evening falls, your brain releases melatonin to prepare you for sleep. But melatonin does something else most people never hear about. It reduces insulin sensitivity in fat tissue and shifts your metabolism into storage mode. Eat a meal too close to bedtime, and your body spends the early night managing digestion and blood sugar instead of doing what it should be doing, producing the deep sleep hormonal signals, including testosterone, that desire depends on. There's a second layer here. Eating late also keeps cortisol elevated overnight instead of letting it fall to its natural low. And as we covered with Walter's story, elevated overnight cortisol is one of the most direct, well-documented suppressors of libido in older adults. Your body can't be in digest and process mode and repair and replenish mode at the same time. It has to choose. And every night you eat late, it chooses digestion at the expense of the hormones intimacy relies on. I had a patient, I'll call her Carol, 71, from Denver. She and her husband had quietly stopped being intimate, and she assumed it was simply where they were in life now. When we reviewed her routine, dinner was consistently at 9 p.m., often later, with bedtime around 10:30. We made one adjustment, moving dinner earlier in 30-minute increments over a few weeks, landing on a firm 3-hour window before bed. Within a month, she told me something she hadn't expected to feel again: more energy in the evenings, and a closeness with her husband that had quietly returned on its own. The practical application. Aim for a minimum 3 to 4 hour gap between your last meal and bedtime. If you go to bed at 10, finish eating by 6 or 7. If a medication requires food close to bedtime, ask your pharmacist whether a small, low-carbohydrate snack could meet that requirement without triggering a full insulin response. This single adjustment doesn't just affect your waistline or your sleep. It directly protects the hormonal window your body needs for desire to exist at all.
This is a good moment to pause. If this channel has ever told you something your doctor never had time to mention, take a second and hit subscribe. It helps this information reach more people who need it. Number 1. The thing almost every older adult does every single morning that is quietly stealing the very thing they came here looking to get back in. And it's this: sitting down within the first 30 minutes of waking. I know you didn't see that coming. Here's the biology. In the first 30 to 45 minutes after waking, cortisol naturally surges by 50 to 100% above baseline. This isn't the bad cortisol we talked about with sleep and late dinners. This morning surge has a completely different job. It's anti-inflammatory, it clears overnight joint stiffness, and critically, it kicks off the hormonal cascade that regulates testosterone and estrogen production for the entire day ahead. When you wake up and immediately sit, coffee in the recliner, breakfast at the table, the morning news on the couch, you signal to your body that today's physical activity is already over. That cortisol surge has nowhere productive to go. And research has shown that adults who are sedentary in that first waking hour show measurably lower daily testosterone output, independent of how active they are later in the day. There's a second piece tied directly to this. Overnight, your joints, hips, lower back, knees stiffen as synovial fluid thickens and your spinal discs swell with fluid. That stiffness isn't just uncomfortable. For many older adults, it's the quiet, unspoken reason intimacy starts to feel like something to brace for rather than enjoy. Limited mobility, morning ache, a body that doesn't feel like it used to. Gentle movement in that first half hour doesn't just lift mood and hormones. It pumps fresh fluid back into those joints, easing the physical stiffness that so often gets blamed wrongly on just getting older. I had a patient, I'll call him Richard, 74, from Phoenix. He and his wife had quietly stopped being intimate, and he assumed his body had simply aged out of that part of life. His mornings looked like Robert's from one of my earlier videos. Coffee, recliner, the news, an hour of stillness before he moved at all. We made one change: a 10-minute walk outside, within 15 minutes of waking, before coffee, before the chair.
3 weeks later, he told me something he hadn't expected to feel again. Not just less joint stiffness, but a sense of vitality and confidence in his own body that he'd said he'd quietly grieved is gone. The practical application: within 15 minutes of waking, get moving. A 10-minute walk, gentle stretching, even standing in natural light by a window. This pairs perfectly with morning sunlight, which triggers a serotonin release, timed exactly with that cortisol surge, stabilizing mood, regulating your circadian rhythm, and supporting healthy hormone production for the whole day. This is not about romance. It's about giving your body and your hormones the conditions they need to want it back. Now, let me bring this home for you, because this isn't just biology and statistics. This is about your life. Close your eyes for a moment, if you're comfortable. Imagine tomorrow morning, your alarm goes off, and instead of that quiet, familiar resignation, you simply begin. You step outside into the morning light. You feel that stiffness in your hips start to loosen, vertebra by vertebra, like ice beginning to thaw. Tonight, your bedroom is cooler. Dinner finished hours before bed. Your body, finally given the conditions it needed, does what it was always designed to do, quietly while you slept. And somewhere in that quiet repair, desire isn't something you have to chase or force. It simply returns, the way it used to. Not because you tried harder, because you stopped working against your own biology. That feeling is not out of reach. It's 3 small changes away. Before you go, I want you to think of someone. A spouse who's quietly stopped reaching for you and assumed that was just how it is now. A friend who's told you they've let that part of life go. A partner lying next to you tonight, wondering the same thing you came here wondering. They don't have to live like that. Share this with them. It costs nothing, and it might give them back something they thought was simply gone. And if this helped you, hit subscribe. Every week we bring you research-backed guidance for life after 60, because this stage of life deserves better information than it's been given. Tell me in the comments, which of these 3 changes are you trying first? I'll see you in the next one.